was kind of new, so it's kind of I guess we're both sort of figuring it out as we go along, what it was and what it meant and how it would look. I think from the outset, when we kind of developed a bit of a process, like what sort of mapped the research project, and kind of bearing in mind that Liam was there for a period of time, so would do kind of a piece of the research with subsequent students sort of carrying that on. And I think that was kind of a bit of a document that I found useful. I've sort of kept going back to, because there was lots of sort of kind of red herrings or things you kind of pursue or chase that would kind of draw you away from, really interesting stuff, but kind of coming back to the research question. And, I found that kind of mapping the process useful in terms of bringing us back on task again.
We set out a plan of sort of attack for the research, so starting with the topic or the chosen question, and then running through into literature review, and then having it all set out, ready and planned, was one of the first tasks that I sort of completed, or we completed together. Was just setting out what the research was going to look like.
Ask lots of questions at the start, just to make it really clear for yourself what you're doing. Don't hesitate to be an ignorant student, which I think you would do in every placement setting. So,
someone else who's coordinating and actually owns the project, who is able to verbalise it clearly to you, and make sure that the things that you've been asked to do are clearly frameworked, have really clearly defined boundaries of what you should and shouldn't do, and have a decent timeline that's not cruel, but actually is achievable.
Initially they didn't really know a lot about what I was actually doing, and then Shane suggested that we talk about it in a team meeting, which we took to a team meeting and explained what it was we were looking at, and explained to them what it was that I was doing and where the research was going to go after I left. And then they, gained a good understanding and were able to, some of them were able to talk to me about their own ideas on the research and what they think.
It was good to be able to draw some of the workers in too, and when they had a moment, to have just a discussion with them about something that had come across, and were they aware of that, or had they come across that before?
To begin with, right at the beginning, I made an appointment to go and see the librarian at Hill Morton. So I started at that point in regards to how to go about retrieving the relevant literature that I was after. As well as that, I spoke to a researcher at Hill Morton as well, and sort of looked at finding any information that he had on any evaluation tools that he'd come across during research that he'd done on different sort of topics, but just looking at how I go about finding evaluation tools.
I got in contact with sort of people that were within the specialist field of younger onset, which was really great, and they were able to guide me in what databases to look up, and one lady I emailed, she attached a lot of articles for me to look at, which were really, really good. I also began phoning up different agencies or mental health agencies around New Zealand through the different DHBs, and finding out if they had any evaluation tool that they were using that we could also utilise, and if so, any research that they'd done to evaluate that tool.
We ended up dividing up, having 2 supervisions a week, basically a research supervision and sort of a clinical placement supervision, which we found actually worked really well, kind of at different ends of the week. So it meant that Liam could bring the things that he needed to bring for whatever the supervision was about. So it meant too that you kind of, you could sort of focus in on things, because I think with the research supervision you're kind of looking more at the detail, and there's probably a lot more outcomes that as a supervisor you need to be mindful of and aware of, versus your sort of clinical supervision where it's more the learnings that are kind of taken away by Liam?
Weekly supervision with Julie was my lifesaver, because she's already done research herself, so she knows the process reasonably well, and she always had some useful ideas, and she always challenged me. So I found that to be the most useful.
Definitely supervision. We used my supervision to, like, we had a split, so we'd talk about the practical base of my placement and then the research base.
Yeah, I think it's important to make time to think about how it does relate to social work. I think for me, a lot of it was, we had a lot of things to do, so just getting the job done and making the time for supervision to actually think about what it means in relation to social work was really important.
For me, I think the research tutorials that yourself and Jane and Yvonne set up with the other students was really beneficial, because you could see that the other students were struggling with similar things, and it just made you feel supported, and having that support made it so much more easier as a student, and I think that you definitely need that.